It's Javonte Williams against Miles Sanders for the Cowboys' RB1 job. We will tell you who will win the job next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we're continuing with our training camp preview, looking at the running back position. And Landon, I have to say, of all the positions on the roster, this is the one that probably feels the most up for grabs, unstable, whatever word you want to use.
Incomplete.
Yes, incomplete. That's the right word. But let's start with the veterans, Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams. Of these two, which one do you think is the more likely of the two to win the starting job, the week one job?
You know, I think if you would have asked me this when they first signed, or maybe like before the draft or something like that, I think I probably would have said Javonte Williams. I think, just based on the reports we're hearing, it does sound like Miles Sanders has got a little bit of pep in his step and has shown out a little bit in as much as you can in minicamp. So I really do think it's like a roll of the dice at this point. So I'll say Miles Sanders at this point, just because I feel like it's a horse race and he's ahead right now. But, if we get into camp and once the pads come on, and that's where I assume that Javonte Williams would probably look a little bit better than Miles Sanders once we're actually trying to take bodies down. It's certainly possible that he could, retake that spot.
I think it depends on what the Cowboys want from their quote unquote lead running back. Do you want the between the tackle grinder who's gets what's blocked and can move a pile a little bit, or do you want somebody who's a little bit more high variance like Miles Sanders, where I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to be awesome between the tackles, but I do think he's the one that can give you the 10 to 12 to 15 yard runs. But is it worth, maybe having some more negative runs? I don't know. I'm not sure what the Cowboys want here, but I do think who they pick between these two running backs will tell us a lot about how they view running the football.
Yeah, and it could be that at the end of the day that maybe they decide to go game plan specific for some of these situations, right? It could be that it's a true sharing situation, and week to week they set out a game plan based on that player's style and who they're facing and seeing how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, I think where we are right now, like, it's not even just that the running back position is incomplete. It's like we haven't gotten in all the grades yet. It's like that's where we are, is that they still haven't had their final exam, because without pads on and without running behind an offensive line, it's really kind of fruitless to kind of put in pins for sure who's going to be the running back one of this team, until we get eyes behind an offensive line.
We also just don't even know what style or type of running back they want. You look at this roster, and we'll get to Jaden Blue and Phil Mafa and some of the other names and Deuce Vaughn. Like, every running back is completely different from one another, which, again, I think is good, like that you have some variety, but I think it just leaves everything so open-ended that we just have no idea what the running back, what the backfield might look like in week one, let alone like week 10, week 12, once we get into the meat of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the biggest stories of this season is that the fact that the Cowboys are changing their run scheme, in probably the most major way that they have in years. So I think even if the Cowboys were kind of continuing on in sort of the kind of percentages of run scheme that we were used to the last, really 6-7 years, like a long time, I think it would be hard to predict who the starting running back is, but you add in the fact that Clayton Adams is coming in and that they're going to be changing the percentage of what they're doing, and really it's going to be a different kind of style of running game. That just adds to the uncertainty of trying to name a starter at this point.
So I'm going to ask you two questions. The first one is, who do you want to win this running back battle of these two? I think the answer would be Jaden Blue if he's, but they're not. It's not going to be Jaden Blue. It's probably going to be one of the veterans. Of these two guys, which one do you want to be the RB1?
I think I want it to be Williams because I can envision a situation in which there's actually still some upside left with Javonte Williams, right? He had a nasty knee injury, 2 years ago. He's just saying that he's just now starting to feel comfortable after it, and getting some of that explosion back. I think if there was somehow a way to get a 90% version, 95% version of what we saw of this guy when he was a rookie, which is not that long ago. I think that combined with what you've got in Blue would be a really great combination, a really good complementary combo. I think with Sanders, it's he's a little bit older. He's been in the league. I mean, he's not old, but because he came into the league so young, but he's been around for a little bit. He's got a lot more touches. I think I'm hoping for a better floor from Sanders just because I think that's kind of where he is in his career. But I think Williams is probably the answer because I could squint and see some upside there that you could still squeeze out of him that I don't think you're going to get out of Sanders.
Williams just turned 25 in April, and I agree with you. I think that's the guy that I want to win the job because I just think he's more of a complete back. And if he can get some of that athleticism that we saw at North Carolina and Denver back, you are getting a guy that can do a lot of damage between the tackles. I think a healthy Javonte Williams could give you what Rico Dowdle did in the second half of last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of what they're hoping for is a something close to what a Dowdle level performance, and then a guy that can add a level of dynamic play as a receiver, as a running back. I mean, I think they're trying to recreate that Zeke Pollard situation that they had a couple of years ago. So I think it would make sense if Williams served in that kind of more Zeke role and Blue served in that more Pollard role.
Who do you think is going to win the running back job?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, like I really did think that it's Williams. I think I put Sanders as running back one just a second ago because I feel like he's ahead. But I do have some belief in the idea that Williams is still only 25 years old and was coming off of a major knee injury. And even though he wasn't an efficient running back last year, they still used him a ton. I think he had something like 65 receptions last year, more than that.
It is a good pass blocker, right? I just think the floor is pretty high with Javonte, even if he's not healthier than he was last year.
Yeah, and I just think that there's a more outcomes in which Williams comes in and surprises us with his play, I think, than there are for Miles Sanders coming in and surprising us in a positive way with his play.
And again, we've been saying this all offseason that Miles Sanders should look really good in offseason workouts when there's no pads and you can't get tackled, right? Javonte is going to look better once you get to training camp. I mean, they don't do a lot of tackling in training camp, but maybe that'll change. But once the pads come on, I think that's when he'll shine. But that'll be fascinating to see how these two veteran running backs do out in Oxnard. All right, let's talk about the rookie running backs because the Cowboys drafted two on day 3 of the NFL draft, Jaden Blue and Phil Mafa. What roles can we expect from them as rookies? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, you guys know how much I love golf, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not just make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I love FanDuel. I use it all the time. Even today, I was looking at up some of the awards for the NFL season. I was looking at some of the stat leaders and projections. Plus, the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are breaking down the Cowboys running back situation going into training camp. Let's talk about the two rookies, Jaden Blue from Texas, Phil Mafa from Clemson. I think Blue is probably the only running back on this team that's guaranteed to be on the 53-man roster. What do you envision his role being as a rookie?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna kind of play him in this sort of dynamic, playmaker sort of role where they obviously use him as a running back. I mean, again, the Pollard role is a good kind of definition, right? It's you're going to get some inside runs, but they're definitely going to use you as an outside runner and as a receiver, right? I think that's the area where Blue kind of separates himself from a lot of these other running backs coming out of college. Is he's got incredible receiving skills. He's worked on it really hard, and he's dynamic out of the backfield with the ball in his hands. He can make people miss in open space. So I think he's a guy that they are going to force targets to because they want to give him the ball and opportunities to have the ball in space in order to create plays. Anything beyond that, I think, is going to be, hinging on exactly what you see from him out of training camp. What can he do as a tackle breaker? Is he even capable of kind of taking on a more rounded role this early in his career? I mean, he is, probably 195 pounds if we're, putting weights in his pocket. So I think that you have to be careful with your usage there. It's certainly the number of touches and targets and that sort of thing. But he's a guy that you are definitely going to be planning to give the football to, 4, 5, 6 times a game at least, to try to create and give you some big plays in the run game if you're not getting it from the other kind of running backs that they're rotating.
He's still a 5th-round pick, and I know this running back class was one of the best ever, one of the deepest we've ever seen. So he's not your, every year 5th-round running back, but it's still a day 3 pick. And it's not very often that these day 3 running backs come in and get 250 touches. Now it does happen, but I look at someone like Tony Pollard as a rookie coming out of Memphis, 86 carries, 15 receptions. Blue's going to have more receptions, but does he get to 100 total touches this year, Landon?
I think that's a good number. The 100. I think that's a good number to kind of to shoot for. I don't know if he does quite make it all the way up to 100 touches, but I think that's kind of what you're looking at, right? And I agree. I think I would probably push a little bit more of those touch percentages to the receiving side compared to what Pollard did his rookie year. I think that, they're going to try to find ways to get him the ball. They know that they need a dynamic playmaker out of the backfield. I don't know that any of these other guys kind of fit that bill. Maybe, maybe they're really squinting their eyes and looking down at Deuce Vaughn to kind of, nice. Well, listen, he's hard to find. That's part of the reason he's so dynamic potentially. So, I do think that he's worth mentioning here because normally I think it's a situation where you and I have commented, it just didn't look like it's working for Deuce Vaughn. It just didn't look like, he had the juice and the kind of threshold of speed and agility that you need in order to play football in the NFL at 5'8", whatever 100 pounds he is. So I think that
5'8", they would love that if you called him 5'8".
Oh yeah, it's like 5'6", right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's grown some of it. Yeah, I mean, and I think the difference is that now he does actually have he somehow got somebody to come in and be an advocate for him, which is a very rare thing, right? Like when your advocate usually gets fired, your offensive coordinator or whoever drafted you, you don't normally get a new advocate coming into the building. But here we are, your former offensive coordinator is the offensive line coach and the run game coordinator. So I think that there's going to be a chance that he may get some more opportunities than we thought. But yeah, I think mostly speaking, the role of the kind of more dynamic playmaking back, that's going to fall on Jaden Blue and until he's proven that he can't do it.
I'm open to all possibilities with Jaden Blue because I look at someone like Bucky Irving last year, who was I think he was a 4th-round pick. He came in at the combine, 5'10", 194 pounds, which is almost identical to what Jaden Blue is. And Bucky Irving had over 200 carries, 1,100 rushing yards, and 8 touchdowns. Like, he was awesome for Tampa Bay. Now, it took him a little time to get going, but once Tampa Bay just realized he's our most explosive running back, they didn't mess around. They just gave him the touches because it made their offense better. So I could see that, like, maybe we get through the first month of the season after playing Philly in New York, and maybe the pass rushes ease up a little bit, and that's when they unleash Jaden Blue. But I also could see something playing out like what we saw from Tony Pollard, where he's just a ways away. He needs time to develop. He's not somebody coming into the league with 600 career carries. Like, he needs refinement. Again, I know that sounds like such a cop-out answer, but I'm open to a lot of different outcomes and scenarios here.
Here's another thing that I think is going to factor into all of this, and I guess fantasy football people, if you're going to listen to me, listen to this.
Check out Locked On Dynasty Football every single day.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, good. Okay, that's fair. Do that, but don't draw me into more fantasy football conversation. I think another thing that's going to be a big part about Blues usage or potential uses this year is, how does Brian Schottenheimer view using running backs in the pass protection schemes? Because I think if the plan is that he likes to use running backs more in protection, then it may take Blue a little bit of a time to kind of get on the field, because that's somewhere where he's got to develop for sure. But if the plan is to, go back to a situation where you're not relying so much on your running backs for pass protection, maybe it's more tight ends, maybe it's just more 5-man protections and just getting the ball out quicker. But if you're trying to move away from that and trying to move towards a situation where you're putting your running backs out into route more often, then that will help expedite. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. Expedite the Blue getting onto the field, because I think you don't have to worry about this overly complicated, difficult skill set that he may not have developed too much in college in order for him to get on the field.
Yeah, I saw Bucky Irving last year. Great example. Liam Cohen with Tampa Bay just didn't ask him to pass protect a lot. They just sent him out on routes, or he was the check down option. Had 47 receptions as a rookie. I mean, that's a lot for a running back that's already getting that big of a workload at the backfield. And I look at someone like Lance Dunbar, who I think I compared Jaden Blue to pre-draft, but this is somebody, or Dunbar was a guy that would stay in for a second just to chip, and then he would release into the flat, or he would sit down right in the middle of the field. And he actually became a pretty good asset that way, just being the underneath receiver. I wouldn't be surprised if Blue is used in a similar way on passing downs.
Dunbar was an incredibly valuable member of this team, and basically was only a 2-minute receiving back. Yeah. He only came in the game in the 2-minute drives or the no huddle drives, and was just an underneath guy who gave you 7 yards on an underneath pass as opposed to 3 yards, right? Yeah. So I definitely could see Blue kind of doing that early on and often, just like as a guy who's out there when they're running no huddle. Dak loves to run no huddle, and it's just a guy that, hey, boom, 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 all covered, dump off the Blue. Hey, Blue maybe, Blue made a guy miss. Now it's a 15-yard run as opposed to a 3-yard run. Like, that's the kind of thing they're looking for.
And I could see the Cowboys using more like, okay, it's a 5-man protection, but Jake Ferguson is chipping at edge before he releases out. Same with Jaden Blue on the other side. So it's technically 7 guys blocking, but all 5 going into routes as receivers. So we'll see how the Cowboys plan to use Jaden Blue. We should mention Phil Mafa. I know he's a 7th-round pick. He is not your traditional 7th-round pick. He was a super productive running back at Clemson, averaged over 5 yards per carry in his career. I just won't be surprised if he beats out one of these veteran running backs for a spot on the roster.
Yeah, honestly, we didn't leave Phil enough time to talk about it, because I honestly have a lot of hope for Phil Mafa, and I think that, again, in a deep class, was a late-round pick, one of these guys who just kind of got lost in the shuffle, but I do have hopes that he can come in, be a physical back who can, break tackles, who could be an excellent complement to Blue down the road. I don't have any kind of concept yet on exactly what to expect from him this year. Like, is he making the team? Is he a practice squad guy? He is definitely one of the folks that where you're going to learn the most about in training camp. But definitely high expectations despite being a late round pick.
Yeah, he's not going to be Derrick Henry or like Garrett. Or sorry, I was going to say like Garrett Blount is a comp for him. He's not going to be Leonard Fournette. He's not going to get you the 40-yard, 50-yard runs. But what he can do is be a hammer and give you the 6-yard runs on 3rd and 2, and just be the guy between the tackles that is so strong and so hard to bring down. I like what I saw a lot from him in the first half of the season in
Yeah.
2024. There's something there that I would like to see the Cowboys develop and give him opportunities to have an impact in the backfield right away.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that just because of his playing style, again, the deep class that kind of got it shuffled, the fact that he kind of incurred some injuries in the middle of the season and sort of slowed down a little bit, that he kind of may have just been lost in the shuffle a little bit. But yeah, you watch that early Clemson tape from 2024. I mean, he's trucking dudes, and it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
major college football, and so it's not like this is some Coastal Carolina running back. Like this is a guy playing Division One,
Yeah.
Power Five college football, and doing so at a high level. Just kind of again because of just all the injuries and because of just the vast number of these guys. It's easy to kind of overlook a talented player because they maybe didn't have the optimal seat last year in college football. That doesn't mean that he can't be a great professional.
All right, let's talk about the running backs who aren't on the Cowboys roster. Could we see the Cowboys go out and make a move at the RB position some point before the season? We'll talk about that more next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, later, let's talk about the running backs not on the roster. Could we potentially see the Cowboys make a move either over the summer or before week one?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like there certainly isn't anything in this running back room that would prevent you from going out and getting a guy that you thought was a talent upgrade from what you have, right? I think, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, right? That the running back is a position that you can find these guys kind of at any point during the year, and maybe not the top 5 guys, but that's just every position. But I mean, the kind of player, the average player on the street at the running back position is of higher quality than relative to his position than probably any other street free agent in the NFL, right? Like you could plug in a street free agent running back and he would perform at just replacement level, which is probably better than what you would get at wide receiver, or tight end, or offensive line, or any number one of these positions. So I think there's that, right? That there's just always stock available of some kind of running back. And then on top of that, because it's training camp, because we're coming out of a draft class that was incredibly deep, teams are also going to be figuring out their running back situations. And there may be too many of them on some of these teams that, double dipped or, just they like the guy that they drafted a lot and they already had somebody in as an insurance. And maybe they'd be willing to flip a low round pick for a guy that you feel like may be a clear upgrade on the other veteran running backs you have. So there are obviously several names that have been kind of kicked around due to the fact that people reading the tea leaves of, like I just said, the draft picks and the money and the contract years, that sort of thing. So we'll talk about some of those names, but I think that even those names will change as we go through the summer. We'll start to hear more names. We'll start to hear, hey, this coach isn't meshing with this player, or they're looking to move this guy because this rookie's looking incredible. So I think, I was just talking about this a little while ago with someone on a radio hit, and it's like, the Cowboys are probably going to take both stance of wait and see what happens in training camp with their veterans, but also keeping their eyes open and their heads on a swivel in case a opportunity pops up where they could clearly upgrade the position.
They're not going to sign a Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry in August. Like that's not going to happen.
No.
However, I will say we saw a team. I'm going to give you an example from last year. Kareem Hunt in 2023 with the Browns averaged 3.0 yards per carry. It looked completely done. I mean, done. The Chiefs signed him to the active roster in Kansas City on September 24th. After the season was already going on, he ended up becoming their leading runner. He ended up being number 1 in success rate among all running backs with at least 200 carries last year. And he was the starting running back in the Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs. And he played a big role for the offense.
Yeah.
I think you can find players like that. If your blocking is really good up front and your quarterback is healthy, guys that can come in and be successful and maybe they don't add value to your offense, but they're getting what's blocked and they're doing their jobs. Those are the kind of guys that are going to be available in July, August, September. And that's why I'm not stressing out about that position that much.
The run game is going to be make or break by what happens at the offensive line.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is what's going to dictate whether this run game is good or not.
And that's been the way that football's been for 100 years, right? Like it's your offensive line and not the running back.
And that's the analytical bet that the Cowboys are taking with their running back approach currently, right? And so the idea is that the floor is set by the offensive line. The ceiling is probably set by how much more the running back can give you. But the truth is that the blocking itself and the scheme that you use can also help the running back perform at a higher level than they used to. So all of it is a formula that has to be kind of unveiled to us a little bit. And that's why I do think the Cowboys probably feel comfortable with where they are, is like, hey, we've got answers that we still need to find out. If we get the bad answers, then we still have recourse we can still do if we need to go out and get somebody.
And blue chip running backs become available. Like we see running backs traded every year. Was it 2 years ago that Christian McCaffrey got traded from the Panthers to the 49ers and kind of helped them get to the Super Bowl? Or the NFC Championship got that game, and then the next year, the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that one of those guys is going to become available, but that is one position where teams are willing to give away guys if they're not succeeding.
Breece Hall, Cooks, these are names of guys that we've heard that are available potentially for some kind of trade. I don't know if it's true, but just an example, these guys do become available.
Kenneth Walker's another one that we should mention as well.
Absolutely.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. We are answering your Twitter questions tomorrow. Send them into us at McCoolBCB, at Marcus_Mosher, and we'll see you right back here on Wednesday.